Good afternoon, everybody. How we doing?
Hey, good today, Professor. How about yourself?
Hanging in there for a Monday. Let's see,
Yeah, I
Josh
feel you
here
on
yet?
that.
I got Josh yet? Josh, you here? No, not yet. So any questions, concerns? What's going on with the groups? Anything with the final that we're going to go over a little bit later today?
Professor, I had a quick question about the project.
Yep.
For the citation page, do we do MLA format?
No, you don't do any format. No MLA, no APA. You do it in consulting format.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Professor, do you think you can go over the prompt questions for the final?
The what questions?
The questions that we're gonna have for the final?
How can I go over something I don't know what they are yet?
Oh, okay, never mind.
I'm just messing with you. Yes, I'll go over the questions.
All right, sorry, I got a 2-year-old trying to squeeze by in the recliner. It's not gonna happen either.
Well, that's what cribs are for. And then you can put a top on them so they can't get out.
That's actually a pretty good idea. Get this thing out of here.
I raised 3 boys, so you know.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Yeah, we got the living room is completely covered with toys right now.
Yeah.
So.
Duct tape works really well too.
So does rope.
You're gonna start pinballing stuff with my significant other now on how to control this thing.
Yeah. All right, let's give it a few more minutes, get a few more people in here, and then I'll start going over the review. So basically, this is our last week. This is week 10. No more, we've covered everything in the book. We've covered, what else have we covered? Covered a few of the things that weren't in the book. So basically, I'm going to go over what I expect a little bit out of the group projects over our review. We're going to do some of that. And then I'll show you a little bit about what the final is going to be. And you'll probably have 3 or 4 days at least for the final. Probably give it to you later this week, at the end of the week. So questions, concerns, everybody get all their stuff turned in? Yes, no, maybe. A couple of the links still didn't work. I don't know why. I tried to redo them, but they didn't. So then if you still need to turn something in, email it directly to me if it didn't go through on the iLearn. All right. So that's like with first chance, second chance, third chance, fourth chance, you know, too many chances. But that's okay. I take points off. All right. Anything else? Questions, concerns? Let's get started, shall we?
Hey, do we have class on Wednesday? Lecture on Wednesday?
There's going to be no class on Wednesday, and it's going to be, I'm going to reserve that for groups and for people who want to come in and ask questions. So I'll be there for about an hour. We had a lot of time conflicts with a lot of the groups that couldn't make it at the time. You know, all they could do is make it during class time. So I'm going to designate that class time for everybody who wants to come in, ask me questions, see me, talk to me, whatever. All right, but there's no mandatory class on Wednesday, but I will be here for an hour.
All right, copy you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Other questions, concerns? All right. So final exam, obviously you're going to talk about the SWOT and all these good things. Or not your final exam, your final group project. You're going to use many of these, all of these that we're going to go over. Not all of them, but most of them. Markets to pursue, value, unique value to offer, resources, capabilities to develop, sustained advantage. And then the SWOT, the strength and opportunities are internal, weakness and threats are external. And then the strategic management, competitive advantage, know what the markets are, all that other good stuff. So cost advantage, basically there are two strategies, pricing, offering the lowest price and grabbing market share, and then sharing market share, but getting a higher profit by pricing your same as your competitors. Chapter 2 is all about Porter's 5 forces. We talked about threat of new entries, competitive rivalry, buyer power, threat of substitutes, and supplier power. With your project is the threat of new entry, or how to get into the market is going to be something you're going to concentrate on. Then we talked about value chain, and that's another thing that you're going to incorporate into your group project. This one has the manufacturing value chain in it, but basically it's the same with primary and secondary forces and things that you need to do. Okay, so resources and assets, we gave you what the definitions of those are. For your report, you definitely want physical resources and human resources, financial resources, and intangible resources. So all of those things are going to be incorporated into your report. And then we also talked about chapter 3. We talked about the value chain. It's a little bit more detailed. And then also the VRIO, is it valuable, rare? Is it easy to copy? And is the company organized to take advantage of everything that they have? Okay. And then we talked about PESTEL, political and economic, social, technology, environmental, and legal. Not so much in your report are you going to rely on this framework or the matrix. So that's something, some of these might apply to it, but the whole thing would not. Chapter 4, we talked about cost advantage strategies, economies of scale, making it so big and so cost effective that you can beat out your competition. Learning and experience effects, lower cost due to proprietary knowledge, lower input costs, different business model. So lower cost due to proprietary knowledge is something in the ceramics industry that we know about. So we already know that we're making ceramics. We know how to do that. So that is a proprietary knowledge when we go into a new industry or into a new category to make revenue. All right. So forward and backward integration, which not too many of you guys used when it came to your solution for the project, which is okay. But I would like to see a couple of people do that, but that's fine. So forward downstream, backwards is upstream. So we use the oil industry on this to everything from exploration to pumping gas in your car, or natural gas, or the chemical products that are made that are sold by the petroleum companies. So if you notice, a lot of these companies that sell household chemicals are actually petroleum companies in one form or another. Don't forget about the 3 C's: capabilities, coordination, control. Know them, learn them, love them. Okay. And just like the ceramics industry and the plant that we built for CCC, that is transaction specific asset. So all of the molds that we made, all of the production lines that we made are transaction specific for ceramic products. So it's probably not going to be used for anything else other than the ceramics without retooling the whole plant. So always keep that in mind. So make versus buying, the book example, It would be a mistake if you can make it at 98 and buy it at $1 because the cost wouldn't, saving a couple of pennies is not going to work. In real life example, making versus buying or switching costs, it's anywhere between 15 and 25%. So depending on what the product is, depending on what you're doing, in real life, you want to at least shoot for 25% savings if you're going to make or buy or switching costs. So dangers of vertical integration, we talked about that. With Nike and a few other companies. The dangers of outsourcing, again, we use Nike, Disney, a few other companies. Strategic alliance, the book's example is Disney and the Oriental Land Company. You're not going to be able to strike a total alliance, but you can also do something like for cost effective wise, you can have them invest a little bit of money in equipment or whatnot in your company, and you can give them a better pricing or something of that nature. So it comes basically down to combine unique resources. If a company that you're working with, you guys can combine unique resources like Mercedes and Chrysler did. Pool similar resources, create new alliances, specific resources, and lower transaction costs. And that's another thing too. If you can combine with another company to lower your transaction costs, that's always a very, very good thing. When partnerships and alliances, a holdup is when the partner tries to hold you up, and a misrepresentation is when they are lying to you and telling you false information. So building an alliance capable of management capability, alliance business case, partner assessment, alliance negotiation, alliance management, and asset and termination. So you guys will look at this from your group project standpoint. If you are going to do an alliance, it's going to be probably a contractual alliance at most. Might be a little bit of assets, but not much because you really can't do anything because you guys are owned by a parent company. Okay, strategic alliance partnerships, like we talked about the automakers, Mercedes and Chrysler, Volvo, buying steel. When you make an alliance with a steel company, because steel is, 75% of the cost of your vehicle, you're going to want to keep that as cheap as possible, and so you can make an alliance to keep those costs down. And like we talked about Toyota with their air conditioning units, they bought a joint venture with did a joint venture with a company where they own 49%. So types of strategic alliance, contractual alliance is what most of you will use. Maybe a combination of equity alliance and contractual alliance is acceptable, and a joint venture probably will not be acceptable because of the parent company won't let you guys do that. The contractual agreement, I use my example of my company, how we have a contract to be an authorized HP dealer and service center. We have to sign a contract with that. We get nothing from HP other than the pleasure of selling their products and servicing their products. So HP doesn't give us anything except for the use of their logo and being able to do business with their products. Okay, an equity alliance, like we said, Toyota does a lot of those in between 5% and 49% of the other company. Okay, and then joint venture, how Google and NASA did a joint venture where they did a whole separate company. That is something that you're not going to be able to do. All right. So vertical alliance is an alliance between firms who position at different stages along the value chain, such as supplier and buyer. In a horizontal alliance, we use the example of the auto dealerships all being in an auto center in the same place. They share resources, advertising resources. They share space, sometimes land to store their cars on. They'll lease it out together. That's why you'll see different manufacturers of cars in the same lot when it's off-site of the dealership. And then also other things that they do together to help save money. So basically an alliance creates a cost savings benefit for everybody involved. So even though they're competitors, they can still save costs by working together. Okay, so vertical alliances, like we talked about Toyota, and then basically create unique resources, create new alliances, and lower transaction costs. Okay, so we talked about the Mercedes-Benz, Daimler Chrysler at one time. They split now. They got everything that they needed to get out of that. Mercedes got the ability to make SUVs and vans and cargo vans, small cargo vans, and Chrysler got a lot of the advanced technology that Mercedes-Benz put into their cars. And I like to always say that the Jeep that I bought was during that time, and the taillight always cost me $300 to replace. If it was a Jeep, it would have cost like $100. And a Jeep that was like 1 or 2 years earlier. All right, for the same car. Products and services customized in each country, decentralized. And then the big difference between multi-domestic strategy and a global strategy. Multi-domestic is differentiation between the different regions, local responsiveness, maximum political exchange rate risk. So they basically can cater to the individuals in that region, like we talked about how Coca-Cola and Pepsi formulas are a little bit different depending on what region of the world they're in, as opposed to a global strategy. They make a toothbrush and they distribute it to everybody. So the toothbrush, it's not going to taste different in Asia as opposed to South America. And then they have a better ability to coordinate activities, and they can speed up in their product and development. So when they make a new toothbrush, they're not going to have to get input from all around the world on the different markets that they sell to, different ideas, because it's basically the same no matter where they sell it. Everybody's teeth are pretty much almost the same. All right, so external threats, remember opportunities and threats and the SWOT analysis are external. Strength and weaknesses are internal. So for your report, you're not going to concentrate too much on the PESTEL report or on the PESTEL matrix, but on your final exam, I will let you know, yes, you will be using that. Okay, so political, economic, social, technology, environmental, and legal. So for example, when Walmart went to India, the technology and the infrastructure were not what Walmart was used to. They didn't have big freeways. They didn't have big stores with 50,000 populations of 50,000 people. They had even rural areas than that. And then they were not set up to go to the grocery store once a week and buy a week's worth of groceries. They weren't set up to actually fill up a big, huge truck and deliver to their mega stores. So that's one of the reasons why they were not very successful in India. In China, or not China, but India, Brazil, and Germany. They all had, and I think South Korea, a few other countries, they had problems with that. All right, time for you guys to participate. What is the most important thing that you learned in this class? Disregard question 2. I don't know why I did that. Probably because I did it wrong. I said disregard question 2. So what's the most important thing to remember from this class? V, what do you think?
Honestly, I mean, I see use in a few of these different options, so I need time to pick the best one.
Which one?
I haven't picked one yet. I see usefulness in each of them, so I need to pick.
I didn't put D, all of the above, sorry. All right, come on, wake up. We got plenty more people. Just checking to see if you guys are awake and paying attention. How companies work, that seems to be a very popular one.
I think just learning how companies differentiate from each other and what brings them competitive advantage over others. Before this class, I didn't really understand why certain companies were better than others. I thought it was very arbitrary, but looking into the way they structure their business is actually very important to how they stay on top. And I thought that was valuable information.
It's extremely important information. And how do companies do that?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to gain competitive advantage. One thing that really stuck with me was deciding whether to outsource or not, because on one hand, you could be getting a more cheap product, or you could do it yourself and guarantee quality. Also integration, making sure that you've got your hands on everything. Control is really important, but having too much of it can drain your energy in other investments as well. So.
Absolutely. All right. So how companies work is the most important thing that you guys got out of this class. Very good. But in order to find out how companies work, you need to dun 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 communicate. Woohoo. So as in life, as in relationships with significant others, as in with a business, communication is always the most important thing. If you cannot communicate, your company cannot function, your life will not function very well, and your wife will slap you upside the head and say, I said that already, listen to me the first time. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. Okay, so you remember this guy, right, Gertz? So he's not a big deal with your report that you're going to do, your group report. However, on the final exam, he probably will be more important. So remember they had 6, the power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty, avoidance, pragmatism, indulgence. So pragmatism is how a society has maintained some links with its past while dealing with changes in the present and in the future. All right, so what societies deal better with that? Which ones don't? Indulgence, the extent to which people try to control their desire and impulses based on the way they were raised. So are you resistant or are you indulging in it? All right, and then your book gave examples, the administrative distance. And these were not only were they differences in the way they do business, but they're also geographical instances. So these are the differences between these two are how to go into a different country, what the cultures you need to look for, or the infrastructures you need to look for when you're conducting business. And if you're going to be compatible, that's always a big thing. So strategy and global strategy, we went over these many, many times over the course. So some of the difference between countries that increase complexity and affect the success of international strategies include customers' tastes, needs, and income levels. For example, the income levels in rural India may not be conducive to a super Walmart. You know, not everybody can go there and spend $100 at a time and, you know, drive off with 10 bags of groceries on their scooter. You know, that's something that Walmart didn't foresee. And when they went into that country and said, well, most people ride scooters, even families. There's some pretty crazy, scary pictures if you take a look at what they do over there. And that's the whole reason why Tata Motors got that small car, was very, very successful in the way they sold them in the rural areas. So government regulations, like we saw in France, companies offer certain things, and the government already gives those people those rights and those regulations. Legal systems, a lot of legal systems are not set up to be very business friendly. So sometimes that's not always a good thing. And public tolerance for foreign firms. Some countries just don't like other countries to do business. Okay, and then reliability and basic infrastructure. For example, big trucks, there wasn't an infrastructure for the big trucks for Walmart in many of these countries. Okay, so competitive advantage, configuration, coordination, the 3 C's again, as it applies to multi-domestic, global, and arbitrage. All right, and then we talked about competing internationally, how McDonald's has the Big Mac almost on every menu, as opposed to a lot of different items that are regionally favorite types of foods to compete with other restaurants. Then we talked about arbitrage strategy, takes advantage of country competitive advantages, source of low-cost labor on unique resources like skilled workers. And then the Big Mac Index, which is the purchasing power parity, basically a basket of goods, what it costs here in the United States, as opposed to the same basket of goods in Colombia. It might be a fraction of the cost, or in Sweden, where it's double the cost. And then cultural arbitrage, capitalizing on differences in cultures between countries. For example, IKEA, how they capitalize on the Swedish way of building things, the Swedish way of different styles of furniture and other items, how they capitalize on that. Administrative arbitrage, capitalizing on differences, taxes, regulations. Yes. Okay. So Ireland has the lowest tax rate in Europe. So if you were going to open up an office in Europe, you probably want to do it in Ireland, right? As opposed to France that has 35% tax. All right, so innovation, radical innovation, and innovation strategy we all talked about. Radical innovation is the example of how, the taxi service was reorganized by Uber through technology, and it was radically innovated. All right, and this is the Venn diagram where you can see what innovation looks like. Then understanding business models. We talked about the value propositions, customer segments, channels, customer relationships, revenue streams, key resources, and all that other good stuff. And it looks kind of like this. So it's a strategy canvas that we talked about with all those wonderful things. All right, and then finally, we talked about the value chain, how Amazon took out the distributors out of the value chain for Barnes and Nobles and some of the other short steps that they did. But then again, the authors took even a bigger shortcut. They got rid of Amazon, and they just went from directly to the internet to the customers. All right, so competitive strategy. This is what the landscape looks like. So all these wonderful things you should be using in your report. Okay, strategic group. We talked about United, how United, Delta, American are in the full fare group as opposed to Southwest, JetBlue, Spirit, Alaska, Hawaiian Airline are in a low fare group. So we talked about how it is not, there is actually a barrier to mobility because Southwest doesn't have the airlines or the airplanes or the resources to compete in a full fare group going internationally. So they just wouldn't be able to do that. So the strategy canvas is useful not only for uncovering existing differences, but also for finding new ways to beat rivals in the competitive environment. All right, then we talked about the strategy canvas on Thumbtack. We use Thumbtack as an example, how you would, all the different things that you would talk about. Okay, competitor response profile, a profile of competitors that identifies its objectives and assumptions. What drives the competitor? What is the competitor doing? And most importantly, what is the competitor capable of doing? If the competitor is able to drop prices low enough to get all the customers away from you on a certain leg, say Southwest does that to Delta, what is Delta going to do? Delta actually has the resources and the money to where it could actually match prices or even go lower. So the way things are right now, Delta is really not going to pay too much attention to Southwest because it's international flights and it's domestic flights. It has its own customer base, and those customers are not going to be easily swayed over to Southwest. 4 principles for identifying potential competitive moves. Know your strengths and weaknesses. Those are internal. Bring strengths against weaknesses. Those are external. Protect and neutralize vulnerabilities. Those are internal. And develop strategies that cannot be easily imitated or copied. Go with a competitor is not. So remember we talked about blue ocean strategy. And then we have the game theory, a structured approach to analysis of analyzing the competitor. So do what the competitor does. They might be a set of moves, the Nash equilibrium, the game theory, and the Nash equilibrium. So we have a dominant strategy is a theory, a set of actions that are always played no matter what the competitor does. So if you have a large company and you're almost a monopoly, you're going to do whatever the best strategy is for your company to do. So, you know, you're going to try and keep a monopoly. You're going to try and keep everybody out. So those are the best things you can do. In a more competitive environment, a tit for tat strategy, like what Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola does, where they 1 week the one will give coupons out and the other week the other one will give coupons out. All right, so speaking of monopolies, what you're going to do is raise barriers to entry. So that's what a monopoly does. Oligopoly, basically that's when we're talking about the cell phone companies or the cable companies. They're going to do a tit for tat type of strategy where every time somebody lowers prices, somebody else is going to lower prices. And then perfect competition, like I said, in my industry, there's many competitors. So we have to kind of differentiate ourselves. It's based on low cost strategy and differentiation strategy. So what we do, everybody gives a 90-day warranty on parts and labor. We give a 1-year warranty. So most manufacturers will give a 1-year warranty, and we're just backing that up. Most dealers will only give a 90-day warranty. Alignment, remember we talked about the 7S model by McKinsey and Company. So when doing the hard triangle and soft square, the elements of a strategy, structure, and system in the 7S model, the hard levers, basically that's what we're doing for our group project. We're doing a hard lever where we are going to create a revenue revenue stream within 12 months. That is very quick. And then the soft squares will come later, which is the staffing, skills, style, and shared values. Okay, so those are things that take a lot longer and a lot more planning. And the positives for the 7S strategy, and there are negatives for the 7S strategy. Okay, so this is something that you'll probably implement a little bit into your group project. So remember we were talking about strategic change, motivating, moving, and maintaining. So unfreezing is a motivating, the first step in organizational change. It begins when leaders recognize and publicly admit that they need to change. So I'm expecting you guys to put a little bit something in this change, because on the CCC Corporation, the ceramics company, they are changing. They have to do this change. They have to implement this change. And I expect you guys to mention something about this change. And I will be looking for something in this change, and I will be grading on something about the change. Okay, so the change process is the middle step in organizing change that a company engages in. So everything it does to do the change and what it needs to get to the change. And then refreezing, which means reinforcing the change, formalizing it, making it institutionalized by behaviors, methods, and procedures. Okay, so the state of change, whether the change is major or minor, leaders must be able to clearly articulate that there is a need for change and that we are going to change. Always a good thing to listen to feedback. And it's always a good thing to acknowledge the feedback. So collecting the information and say, yes, that's a good idea. No, we can't do it that way because of this reason. Yes, that we will definitely take that into consideration. Okay, use emotional intelligence, something I lack intelligence and emotional sympathy for. I always score very low on that. I don't understand why. Leaders that activate practice and improve their emotional intelligence, which I have to practice all the time, are better equipped to drive positive change. So the more empathetic you are, the better people perceive you when it comes to change and implementing the change. Explain the why. Everyone wants to know why. And define clear roles. Okay, so you notice I did extensively what is going on in here. So provide training. So all of this is going to be included in your report, and reward acceptance. Okay, so generate urgency, build coalition, create vision, shared vision, short-term wins, consolidate, and institutionalize changes. So the first part should take you anywhere from a few months to a year. Second part will take you maybe a year to implement and to do change. And I don't know what the book's thinking, but 4 to 7 years is way too long to implement change.
Professor?
Yes.
On that, so would you say this would be a kind of a good way to outline the short, mid, and long term using that?
You can do it that way, how you're going to change, but just make sure you put down that we are implementing change in the company, and this is how we're going to go about it. This is how we're going to do it. So if you want to implement, if you're going to change that much in the midterm and long-term changes, then yes. If it's only going to be a slight change up, just tell how you're going to change. Okay. So questions about that before we move on? Anyone? Anyone? All right. Okay, so balanced scorecard was another way to assess current performance, internal performance, future performance, and external performance. So all of these things you use to see how the company's doing, where it's going, and how to make it go better. So we talked about corporations. There are many different types of corporations. We group them all under one type of corporation, nonprofits, all the other types. Proprietorship is basically an owner runs the business. Partnerships may be two or many others. And then corporate governance is basically the way you want to run the company and a way to ultimately make decisions and who has the authority in the company and what are the policies. Then we talked about these guys, Burl and Dodd. Burl believes that the corporation should be run primarily for the shareholders, and Professor Dodd said, no, we're going to do the company for the community. And so we had a pretty good, lively debate on that. Then we also talked about, is a corporation good or evil? Basically, a corporation is the sum of its parts, which means that the people who run the corporation are good or evil. So the shareholder primacy, the belief that a corporation should be run primarily or exclusively for its shareholders. That was Burl's philosophy. So the legal owners are the shareholders. We should make as much capital and profit for them as we can. And it's a single objective to maximize profits. That's kind of where Wells Fargo went with that. And then remember, corporations are persons, are legal persons owned in a very real and legal sense by the shareholders. And corporations can own property, planes, boats, RVs, houses, and more. All right, so property rights, owners, and this is when we talk about agents and primaries. Then they also talked about stakeholder model, which is this. There's the internal and the external stakeholder models. So the employees, the managers, and the owners are internal stakeholders, and the external stakeholders are the community at large, suppliers, society, government, creditors, shareholders, and customers. So should a corporation be responsible just to the shareholders, or should it be responsible for the whole community? So we had a long debate over that. Corporations do not exist without a charter from a state. We talked about that. So each state gives their own corporate charters to different companies. That doesn't mean that you have to get a charter in every state. That just means that if you incorporate, you have to get whatever state you're going to originally do business in. You have to get a charter from them. Or even if you don't want to do business in that country or in that state, you can go to Nevada, Florida, and Maryland that have a very big corporate veil and get a charter there and do business all over the United States or the world. Okay. So normative stakeholder view that the corporation has a legal and moral obligation to work for the benefit of its stakeholders. Corporations are self-governing. Remember, there's no state legislation governing corporations. They may provide rules and regulations, what they can and can't do in certain aspects, but they do not regulate corporations. They are governed by government agencies, which means basically you can't go out and pollute. You can't, muddy up the waters and put pollutants in the air for everybody to choke on and die. So the agency problem, a consequence of the separation of ownership. So shareholders are principals versus managers and agents. The agents have a fiduciary duty to take care of the principals, who are the owners. And let me see, the definition of agents: tender offer and proxy fight. And then the agency problem, owned by principals, managed by agents. And this is where Wells Fargo came into a lot of problems. The CEO, who's also a principal, because he owned a lot of stock, wanted to make more money, and he wanted to make more money for the stockholders. So he put unrealistic demands on the agents to sell more, to do more, and that created a lot of problems. Just reading the comments. So monitoring the agents, saying, hey, if you don't do this, we're going to fire you. So that impelled them to act unethically or illegally. And then the principal saying, hey, it wasn't our fault. We didn't tell them to do that. Even though, what's his name? Mikey got caught, got $17 million fine, and can never work in banks again, right? The previous CEO of Wells Fargo. Of course, so he made hundreds of millions of dollars before they fined him $17 million. So don't feel bad for him. All right. So the board of directors and then the agents have a fiduciary duty to do what's right for the company, for the principal. So we talked about inside directors, which is president, CEOs, members of the board, and then outside directors, which sometimes have nothing to do with the companies, but they have professional expertise on certain things that the board wants them, that they want to be on the board for. Okay. So pay for performance, that's when we, that can be a good thing, and bonuses can be a good thing, but when you use them like Wells Fargo did, they're not such a good thing. They create a lot of unethical situations, even breaking the law. All right, stock-based compensation, we talked about that. And my friend got a job offer from Google at a high executive level, and they said, no, we're not going to give you a stock-based compensation. And he said, I can go work for anybody else and get the better money. Why would I want to work for you? So always take that in consideration when they offer you stocks. If you ever get to that point in your career, just be well aware of what the stock is actually worth to you and what you can actually do to it. All right, so we talked about the ethics in with Wells Fargo, and it all rolls downhill from the top, and that creates a culture, an ethical behavior standard, an ethical value standard. All right. Questions about anything we reviewed for your final project? Not all of that's going to be in there, but most of it is. Questions? Anyone? Anyone? All right. How many people are awake? Raise your hand. All right. Blink twice if you're awake. All right. Especially with you, those of you who are not on the camera.
Oh, still awake, boss.
All right. So you guys ready to go over what's going on with the final, right? Yeah?
Yes, sir.
All right. So what's in the chat box? What you guys got going on over there? It's not pulling up. All right, so the 6 Ds, we talked about our buddy Gertz, power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty avoidance, pragmatism, indulgence. And remember the business model canvas for Thumbtack? We did this, how it was all filled out. And then Pastel, we talked about political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal. So a question might come upon you that says Thumbtack is going to go into another country. And based on these English-speaking countries, which country would you recommend based on the 3 things that I just mentioned? And how so? Please explain. So something like that. So you guys be able to handle that? Not too difficult, take home. Easy peasy stuff. Not much pressure, right?
Professor, when are you gonna release the question?
An hour before they're due. I don't want anybody to cheat, you know. No, I'm just kidding. I'll do it like at the end of this week. You'll have a few days, 3 or 4 days.
All right, copy. And then Monday, it's due by what, midnight?
No, it's due at 10 o'clock. Check your syllabus.
10 o'clock at night. Gotcha.
So check your syllabus, Steve, and tell everybody when it's due. Now it's your responsibility.
All right, give me a minute.
No, there's not going to be a page limit for the final, but I expect you to do it nice and organized since you're going to have time to do it organized like you did with the midterm. So each category is going to be bold bolded. You're going to explain each thing that's going on. So it's going to be easy for me to read, because I have to read 100 and something of them. So I can give you multiple choice if you want to do that. And I can bring in Proctor U, and you guys can have your invasion of privacy invaded, and they can watch you on your screen, and you guys can pay for it. How does that sound? No, you guys don't want to do that? That's what the other professors are doing.
I can watch everybody.
You
You don't have to pay me.
don't have to. Okay. So I was with you. Yeah, that's what a lot of the professors are doing, and the students are complaining because they have to let somebody monitor them while they're taking the test. So I figured this is just the easiest way to do it. $20 to be watched. Is that what it costs? Dang. All right. Questions, concerns? No class on Wednesday. For 2 hours. It's $10 an hour. Yeah, it's not that much. All right, you guys are excused.
Class be the last opportunity to ask you any questions related to the project.
Wednesday is the last day you can do anything. So there's no class on Wednesday, but I will be here for at least an hour. And you guys can come in your group. You can come individually because we've been having a lot of problems with time conflicts and everything else. So Josh, is there anything that you have?
Nope. I don't have anything. I'm all set on my end.
All right. So Josh is good. He's giving his F's out for this quarter. That's good. And
I wish.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And as always, you can email me. May not respond, but you can email me all you want.
Sorry, Professor. I'm looking at the syllabus right now. So the final project is due 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. on Monday?
10 p.m. Did I
Got
put
it.
a.m.?
I just couldn't find a date. I might be blind.
Well, it's on the syllabus, the very last page.
All right. Thank you.
Final group project, Monday, 3:15. I didn't put what time it was doing the syllabus, but it's on the, it's there somewhere. It's on the island page.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So you're gonna have at least 3 or 4 days. So. Final group project. Oh, final group projects due at 11:59. I remember setting that up. So it's 11:59, the final group project.
Thank
At the
you.
end of the day. All right. Other questions? Concerns? Thank you, Joshua. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, all students.
And then you still have discussion classes, don't you?
Yeah, we had our last one for Monday today, and then we have one on Friday still.
All right. So anything exciting in the world of anthropology?
That's a good question. I guess my inability to come up with a quick answer means no. But, yeah.
I saw an interesting program last night where they dug up 10,000-year-old mummies from where is it, Greece,
Oh, okay.
in a big old bog.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Bogs, whatnot.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And
Pretty
it was,
crazy.
and they think it were a bunch of people who tried to take over the government because they seem to be affluent people. They were all handcuffed together, and it was pretty interesting.
I wonder if those people ever thought that 10,000 years later, a bunch of people would be digging them up and we'd be talking about them on a screen on the other side of the world. They probably had no idea.
No idea.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you later. I'll stick around for a few minutes if you have any questions.
Professor, just a quick question on the final.
Yes.
Term, you had approximated about 90 minutes to complete it. Do you expect the same for the final or the same or for the full 3
This
hours?
one's going to be probably a little bit more involved since I'm going to give you a couple extra days than what we did for the midterm, but pretty much it'll be about the same. Maybe it shouldn't be more than 5 pages.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Professor, I didn't have a question, but I think for my master's, remember I talked to you about the recommendation letter?
Yeah.
I will be, would it be okay if I send my resume like after the quarter?
Yeah,
Will you
that's
be able
fine.
to work on it? All
Yeah.
right, sounds good. I'll do
And
that.
then if you're using me for reference for your MBA program, they'll email me and ask me for the reference.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.